Welcome to From Chains to Godliness, where truth is spoken, lives are changed, and voices from the inside are heard.
Tonight, let us simply quiet ourselves and listen to the Word of God.
We're reading through the New Testament. We will not add to it or take away from it. It's not open to personal interpretation, but we are to understand it. And we'll understand it only according to what it says, nothing more and nothing less. Thank you, so let's get to it. Matthew chapter 26, verse 1. Now it came to pass when Jesus had finished all these sayings that he said to his disciples. Verse 2. You know that after 2 days is the Passover, and the Son of Man will be delivered up to be crucified. Verse 3. Then the chief priests, the scribes, and the elders of the people assembled at the palace of the high priest, who was called Caiaphas. Verse 4. And plotted to take Jesus by trickery and kill him. Verse 5. But they said, not during the feast, lest there be an uproar among the people. Verse 6. And when Jesus was in Bethany at the house of Simon the leper. Verse 7. A woman came to him, having an alabaster flask of very costly fragrant oil, and she poured it on his head as he sat at the table. Verse 8. But when his disciples saw it, they were indignant, saying, Why this waste? Verse 9. For this fragrant oil might have been sold for much and given to the poor. Verse 10. But Jesus was aware of it. He said to them, Why do you trouble the woman? For she has done a good work for me. For you have the poor with you always, but for me you do not have always. Verse 12. For in pouring this fragrant oil on my body, she did it for my burial. Verse 13. Surely I say to you, wherever this gospel is preached in the whole world, what this woman has done will also be told as a memorial to her. Verse 14. Then one of the 12, called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests. Verse 15. And said, What are you willing to give me if I deliver him to you? And they counted out to him 30 pieces of silver. Verse 16. So from that time he sought opportunity to betray him. Verse 17. Now on the first day of the feast of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus, saying to him, Where do you want us to prepare for you to eat the Passover? Verse 18. And he said, Go into the city to a certain man, and say to him, The teacher says, My time is at hand. I will keep the Passover at your house with my disciples. Verse 19. So the disciples did as Jesus had directed, and they prepared the Passover. Verse 20. When evening had come, he sat down with the 12. Verse 21. Now as they were eating, he said, Assuredly, I say to you, one of you will betray me. Verse 22. And they were exceedingly sorrowful, and each of them began to say to him, Lord, is it I? Verse 23. He answered and said, He who dipped his hand with me in the dish will betray me. Verse 24. The Son of Man indeed goes just as it is written of him, but woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been good for that man if he had not been born. Verse 25. Then Judas, who was betraying him, answered and said, Rabbi, is it I? He said to him, You have said it. Verse 26. And as they were eating, Jesus took bread, blessed and broke it, and gave it to the disciples and said, Take, eat. This is my body. Verse 27. Then he took the cup and gave thanks and gave it to them, saying, Drink from it, all of you. Verse 28. For this is my blood of the new covenant, which is shed for many for the remission of sins. Verse 29. But I say to you, I will not drink of this fruit of the vine from now on until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom. Verse 30. And when they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Verse 31. Then Jesus said to them, all of you will be made to stumble because of me this night. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. Verse 32. But after I have been raised, I will go before you to Galilee. Verse 33. Peter answered and said to him, even if all are made to stumble because of you, I will never be made to stumble. 34. Jesus said to him, surely I say to you that this night before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. Verse 35. Peter said to him, even if I have to die with you, I will not deny you. And so said all the disciples. Verse 36. Then Jesus came with them to a place called Gethsemane, and said to the disciples, sit here while I go and pray over there. Verse 37. And he took with him Peter and his 2 sons of Zebedee, and he began to be sorrowful and deeply distressed. Verse 38. Then he said to them, my soul is exceedingly sorrowful, even to death. Stay here and watch with me. Verse 39. He went a little further and fell on his face and prayed, saying, O my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will. Verse 40. Then he came to the disciples and found them sleeping, and said to Peter, what? Could you not watch with me 1 hour? Verse 41. Watch and pray, lest you enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. Verse 42. Again a second time he went away and prayed, saying, O my Father, if this cup cannot pass away from me unless I drink it, your will be done. Verse 43. And he came and found them asleep again, for their eyes were heavy. Verse 44. So he left them, went away again, and prayed the 3rd time, saying the same words. 45. Then he came to his disciples and said to them, are you still sleeping and resting? Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is being betrayed into the hands of sinners. Verse 46. Rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand. Verse 47. And while he was still speaking, behold, Judas, one of the 12, with a great multitude with swords and clubs, came from the chief priests and elders of the people. Verse 48. Now his betrayer had given them a sign, saying, whomever I kiss, he is the one. Seize him. Verse 49. Immediately he went up to Jesus and said, greetings, Rabbi, and kissed him. Verse 50. But Jesus said to him, friend, why have you come? Then they came and laid hands on Jesus and took him. Verse 51. And suddenly one of those who were with Jesus stretched out his hand and drew his sword and struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his ear. Verse 52. But Jesus said to him, put your sword in its place, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword. Verse 53. Or do you think that I cannot now pray to my Father, and he will provide me with more than 12 legions of angels? Verse 54. How then could the scriptures be fulfilled that it must happen thus? Verse 55, in that hour Jesus said to the multitudes, have you come out as against a robber with swords and clubs to take me? I sit daily with you, teaching in the temple, and you did not seize me. Verse 56, but all this was done that the scriptures of the prophets might be fulfilled. Then all the disciples forsook him and fled. Verse 57, and those who had laid hold of Jesus led him away to Caiaphas the high priest, where the scribes and the elders were assembled. Verse 58, but Peter followed him at a distance to the high priest's courtyard, and he went in and sat with the servants to see the end. Verse 59, now the chief priests, the elders, and all the council sought false testimony against Jesus to put him to death. Verse 60, but found none. Even though many false witnesses came forward, they found none. But at last 2 false witnesses came forward. Verse 61, and said, this fellow said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and to build it in 3 days. Verse 62, and the high priest arose and said to him, do you answer nothing? What is it these men testify against you? Verse 63, but Jesus kept silent, and the high priest answered and said to him, I put you under oath by the living God. Tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God. Verse 64, and Jesus said to him, it is as you said. Nevertheless, I say to you, hereafter you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the power and coming on the clouds of heaven. Verse 65, then the high priest tore his clothes, saying, he has spoken blasphemy. What further need do we have of witnesses? Look, now you have heard his blasphemy. Verse 66, what do you think? They answered and said, he is deserving of death. Verse 67, then they spat in his face and beat him, and others struck him with the palms of their hands. Verse 68, saying, prophesy to us, Christ. Who is the one who struck you? Verse 69, now Peter sat outside the courtyard, and a servant girl came to him, saying, you also were with Jesus of Galilee. Verse 70, but he denied it before them all, saying, I do not know what you are saying. Verse 71, and when he had gone out to the gateway, another girl saw him and said to those who were there, this fellow also was with Jesus of Nazareth. Verse 72, but again he denied with an oath, I do not know the man. Verse 73, and a little later those who stood by came up and said to Peter, surely you also are one of them, for your speech betrays you. Verse 74, then he began to curse and swear, saying, I do not know the man. Immediately a rooster crowed. Verse 75, and Peter remembered the word of Jesus, who had said to him, before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. So he went out and wept bitterly. Matthew chapter 27, verse 1. When morning came, all the chief priests and elders of the people plotted against Jesus to put him to death. Verse 2. And when they had bound him, they led him away and delivered him to Pontius Pilate, the governor. Verse 3. Then Judas, his betrayer, seeing that he had been condemned, was remorseful and brought back the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and elders. Verse 4, saying, I have sinned by betraying innocent blood. And they said, what is that to us? You see to it. Verse 5. Then he threw down the pieces of silver in the temple and departed, and went and hanged himself. Verse 6. But the chief priests took the silver pieces and said, It is not lawful to put them into the treasury, because they are the price of blood. Verse 7. And they consulted together and bought with them the potter's field to bury strangers in. Verse 8. Therefore that field has been called the field of blood to this day. Verse 9. Then was fulfilled what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet, saying, And they took the 30 pieces of silver, the value of him who was priced, whom they of the children of Israel priced. Verse 10, and gave them for the potter's field, as the Lord directed me. Verse 11, Now Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, saying, Are you the king of the Jews? And Jesus said to him, It is as you say. Verse 12, And while he was being accused by the chief priests and elders, he answered nothing. Then Pilate said to him, Do you not hear how many things they testify against you? Verse 14, But he answered him not one word, so that the governor marveled greatly. Verse 15, Now at the feast the governor was accustomed to releasing to the multitude one prisoner whom they wished. Verse 16, And at that time they had a notorious prisoner called Barabbas. Verse 17, Therefore, when they had gathered together, Pilate said to them, Whom do you want me to release to you, Barabbas or Jesus, who is called Christ? Verse 18, For he knew that they had handed him over because of envy. Verse 19, While he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent to him, saying, Have nothing to do with that just man, for I have suffered many things today in a dream because of him. Verse 20, But the chief priests and elders persuaded the multitudes that they should ask for Barabbas and destroy Jesus. Verse 21, The governor answered and said to them, Which of the two do you want me to release to you? And they said, Barabbas. Verse 22, Pilate said to them, What then shall I do with Jesus, who is called Christ? They all said to him, Let him be crucified. Verse 23, Then the governor said, Why, what evil has he done? But they cried out all the more, saying, Let him be crucified. Verse 24, When Pilate saw that he could not prevail at all, but rather that a tumult was raising, he took water and washed his hands before the multitude, saying, I am innocent of the blood of this just person. You see to it. Verse 25, And all the people answered and said, His blood be on us and on our children. Verse 26, Then he released Barabbas to them, and when he had scourged Jesus, he delivered him to be crucified. Verse 27, Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the praetorium and gathered the whole garrison around him. Verse 28, And they stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him. Verse 29, When they had twisted a crown of thorns, they put it on his head, and a reed in his right hand. And they bowed the knee before him, and mocked him, saying, Hail, King of the Jews! Verse 30, Then they spat on him, and took the reed, and struck him on the head. And when they had mocked him, they took the robe off him, put his own clothes on him, and led him away to be crucified. Verse 32, Now as they came out, they found a man of Cyrene, Simon by name. Him they compelled to bear his cross. Verse 33, And when they had come to a place called Golgotha, that is to say, place of a skull. Verse 34, They gave him sour wine, mingled with gall, to drink. But when he had tasted it, he would not drink. Verse 35, Then they crucified him, and divided his garments, casting lots, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophet. They divided my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots. Verse 36. Sitting down, they kept watch over him there. Verse 37. And they put up over his head the accusation written against him. This is Jesus, the King of the Jews. Verse 38. Then 2 robbers were crucified with him, one on the right and another on the left. Verse 39. And those who passed by blasphemed him, wagging their heads. Verse 40. And saying, You who destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourselves if you are the Son of God. Come down from the cross. Verse 41. Likewise the chief priests also, mocking with the scribes and elders, said, verse 42, He saved others, himself he cannot save. If he is the King of Israel, let him now come down from the cross, and we will believe him. Verse 43. He trusted in God. Let him deliver him now, if he will have him. For he said, I am the Son of God. Verse 44. Even the robbers who were crucified with him reviled him with the same thing. Verse 45. Now from the 6th hour until the 9th hour there was darkness over all the land. Verse 46. And about the 9th hour Jesus cried out with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That is, my God, why have you forsaken me? Verse 47. Some of those who stood there when they heard that said, This man is calling for Elijah. Verse 48. Immediately one of them ran and took a sponge, filled it with sour wine, and put it on a reed and offered it to him to drink. Verse 49. The rest said, Let him alone. Let us see if Elijah will come to save him. Verse 50. And Jesus cried out again with a loud voice and yielded up his spirit. Verse 51. Then, behold, the veil of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom, and the earth quaked, and the rocks were split. Verse 52. And the graves were opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. Verse 53. And coming out of the graves after his resurrection, they went into the holy city and appeared to many. Verse 54. So when the centurion and those with him who were guarding Jesus saw the earthquake and the things that had happened, they feared greatly, saying, Truly this was the Son of God. Verse 55. And many women who followed Jesus from Galilee, ministering to him, were there looking on from afar. Verse 56. Among whom were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Joseph, and the mother of Zebedee's sons. Verse 57. Now when evening had come, there came a rich man from Arimathea, named Joseph, who himself had also become a disciple of Jesus. Verse 58. This man went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then Pilate commanded the body to be given to him. Verse 59. When Joseph had taken the body, he wrapped it in a clean linen cloth. Verse 60. And laid it in his new tomb, which he had hewn out of the rock, and he rolled a large stone against the door of the tomb, and departed. Verse 61. And Mary Magdalene was there, and the other Mary, sitting opposite the tomb. Verse 62. On the next day, which followed the day of preparation, the chief priests and Pharisees gathered together to Pilate. Verse 63. Saying, Sir, we remember while he was still alive, how that deceiver said, After 3 days I will rise. Verse 64. Therefore command that the tomb be made secure until the 3rd day, lest his disciples come by night and steal him away and say to the people, He has risen from the dead. So the last deception will be worse than the first. Verse 65. Pilate said to them, You have a guard, go your way. Make it as secure as you know how. Verse 66. So they went and made the tomb secure, sealing the stone and setting the guard. Matthew 28, verse 1. Now after the Sabbath, as the first day of the week began to dawn, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary came to see the tomb. Verse 2. And behold, there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord descended from heaven, and came and rolled back the stone from the door and sat on it. Verse 3. His countenance was like lightning, and his clothing as white as snow. Verse 4. And the guards shook for fear of him, and became like dead men. Verse 5. But the angel answered and said to the women, Do not be afraid, for I know that you seek Jesus who was crucified. Verse 6. He is not here, for he is risen, as he said. Come, see the place where the Lord lay. Verse 7. And go quickly and tell his disciples that he is risen from the dead. And indeed, he is going before you into Galilee. There you will see him. Behold, I have told you. Verse 8. So they went out quickly from the tomb with fear and great joy, and ran to bring his disciples word. Verse 9. And as they went to tell his disciples, behold, Jesus met them, saying, Rejoice. So they came and held him by the feet and worshipped him. Verse 10. Then Jesus said to them, Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brethren to go to Galilee, and there they will see me. Verse 11. Now while they were going, behold, some of the guard came into the city, and reported to the chief priests all the things that had happened. Verse 12. When they had assembled with the elders and consulted together, they gave a large sum of money to the soldiers. Verse 13, saying, Tell them his disciples came at night and stole him away while we slept. Verse 14. And if this comes to the governor's ears, we will appease him and make you secure. Verse 15. So they took the money and did as they were instructed. And this saying is commonly reported among the Jews until this day. Verse 16. Then the 11 disciples went away into Galilee, to the mountain which Jesus had appointed for them. Verse 17. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Verse 18. And Jesus came and spoke to them, saying, All authority has been given to me in heaven and earth. Verse 19. Go therefore and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Verse 20. Teaching them to observe all things that I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Amen.
Thank you so much for listening. For full lessons and deeper study, visit the blog at theparkprisonministry.org.